Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Team Last Stand podcast. I am your host, Mike, ever excited to forget to write my name on my deck list again and make top 8 and be called Player 42. Good times, good times. And I'm joined with me today by the man who can't wait to get knocked out of contention by a rogue deck while playing a rogue deck, Dan.
That was a very long intro for yourself, full of references that no one watching this will understand.
I'm so glad to do that to everyone.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I barely understood it.
And our other co-host, the man who's excited to either win big or lose very fast, Ian.
What's that supposed to mean?
You play Spike Brothers.
I guess.
That's the whole reasoning.
It's the whole gimmick.
I did steal one of Dan's clans this week and dunk you in like 2 turns, but you know.
Win big or lose fast. Anyways, on the docket for this week's topics, we are going to be talking a bit about ride decks, some of the implications that they may have for our new D standard format overlords. Overlords is in the rulers of D standard format, not overlord is in the clan. Please God, no more overlords. And also about possibly my favorite announcement in the past months, Bushiroad Springfest is going to be happening somehow. So we're going to talk about that and see what maybe we come up with, like we have any say in these sort of things. With that all out of the way, let's first talk about our ride decks. So, for those who have been keeping up with the D-Series announcements, the ride deck is a new mechanic introduced as a way to mitigate and effectively eliminate the possibility of being quote-unquote grade stuck or grade locked. Prior to D-Series, when you would start a game, you would mulligan, try to get your hand full of the appropriate grades that you would need to ride up. If you wrote up all those proper grades, you would be able to make your plays, have a game that was fair. But if you didn't, you had to, in the current age, G assist or V assist, where you essentially throw away 2 cards to dig 5 deep for the appropriate grade you need. Or prior to G series, when that mechanic was introduced, you had to just cry and move on to the next game. So I, for one, am excited to no longer be misriding. What say you, Ian, who is so excited about this mechanic?
Well, you see, I once got 9th place at a BCS because I whiffed a G assist round 1 and died for it. Ride decks are good. Whiffing rides is very bad. What do you think, Dan?
Oh, okay, so I'm going to pull back the curtain a little bit here. We spent a good 10 minutes before we started this recording of Ian saying there's so much to talk about ride decks. His entire spiel was 30 seconds long at most.
It's okay.
I told you this, Ian.
There's exciting
Shut
things
up,
to
Mike.
talk about ride decks, like not losing.
Ride deck,
Your
yes.
deck.
There are great things about ride decks. Mainly that you now don't miss your ride targets, which is, hallelujah, the game is saved. We'll see how true that is. Had we done this topic last time, we could have speculated things about premium ride decks and how they can work, changing ratios to guarantee certain ride targets, ways to abuse the mechanic where if a ride deck card gets put into your main deck, it gets put back into the ride deck. There were a ton of options to discuss and speculate on. However, between then and now, they announced, or they confirmed, that the ride deck is only usable in the upcoming standard meta with Overdress, nullifying all of that possible ideas and speculation. Like I told you, Ian, there's not really much to cover on this topic. Ride decks are Standard, they're very cool. I'll agree with you, but they're standard only. We don't know any cards. Possibly there'll be cards that have effects that trigger it when written from the ride deck itself. We'll see later on as cards get announced and released, but for now, there just isn't that much to talk about.
Well, I just think they're neat. For real though, I do quite like, having more space in my deck now and more options. Being able to build a solid strategy, knowing exactly what cards I'm gonna ride every game.
Yeah, I will say, there I think every single person who's ever played this game has a awful story about one time I was grade locked and I just lost. Um, I happen to have a one time I was grade locked at one and I almost beat somebody using a board of grade zeros. Ah, Giera, those are the good days. Um, unfortunately, the problem really here was, while D series is going to be designed with the ride deck as a mechanic in mind, it, ergo they're probably going to avoid abusable Vanguard circle effects. Um, premium has so many premium has so many potentially abusable ways for this. You have, all of a sudden you can guarantee that you're going to hit Bowmain and it's going to find Gareth, and all you need to do is draw the blonde Ezel, and all of a sudden you're off to the races with gold. Or there's Riviere, which is looping on turn 3 and never letting you stride ever again in this game. um there's just so many ways that this could be used and abused in premium. I think it was for the best that this decision was made. It is with a heavy heart that I'd say that, because I would love to not get grade stuck anymore. But alas.
I do think it's unfortunate that those cards interactions exist in premium because there's so many fun things you could do with this in a more fair manner. For example, you can now make the old ride chains from original Vanguard and even from the V Series ride chain style cards are now more consistent. You don't have to whiff your chain and miss your entire deck strategy. There are some decks that run very low ratios in the ones and twos to maximize grade threes, which now don't have to suffer from having to optimize certain parts of the deck. It opens up a lot more strategies to utilize those fringe cards and cases. Back in G era, I ran a couple copies in my Murakumo lists of the original Swift Archer Fushimi, which only worked on the Vanguard at grade 2, but was used to get rid of rear guards, specifically starters, which were a key part to G era back then. So if I got it, I could pressure the opponent in a weird way that they weren't planning on it. But I had to draw my one of my two copies early enough to ride it because it didn't do anything on the rear guard or later in the game. So back then, having those kind of ride decks would have been really cool to let those corner cases or those tech cards have more viability and more reliability than they maybe did back then. So it is a shame that there are a lot of these interactions that we won't get to see because there are other ones that are far too broken. But I think it's better to avoid the problems altogether than have it be there just so some of these fair decks can enjoy them a little bit.
I think this will be very enjoyable in D series standard. Um, I think it'll make the game just overall fairly balanced for D series. Um, yeah, it would be a nightmare in premium. It would just be an absolute nightmare, and there's no way that you could finagle the restriction list would end up massive. So, uh, with the ride deck kind of settled and not really anything interesting with it as far as D series to note, and no real application to premium whatsoever. The other mechanic that we got confirmation about this week was the Persona ride mechanic. Um, and to my understanding, it works very similarly to the way that brake rides used to, where when you ride over the unit, you get the additional skill. Dan, would you mind explaining that a little more in depth?
Sure. So back when they announced the phrase Persona Ride, me and Ian kind of guessed very accurately what it would sort of how it would trigger. we saw the very easy connection of it was a mix of break riding and persona blasting. Persona blasting being where you discard a card with the same name as your vanguard. So here we have an effect where if you ride a vanguard over itself, you get an effect. So right on the money there. What the effect itself is that when you persona ride, so when you ride a grade 3 over itself, with the symbol on the corner of the card, you A, draw a card, and then B, during your turn, all of your front row units have plus 10,000 power. And to our understanding, this is not a power gain ability given to the Vanguard in any way. It is a game state that takes place that, regardless of changes to the board, be it you re-ride the Vanguard or you stride or whatever, you will have that continuous 10k power on your front row. Which has a lot of very interesting applications for specifically premium, because of Excel clans, which could prove problematic. Um, Now you do have to run, well, you do have to run both Persona Ride cards and marker cards. So with the speed of premium, it might not come up that often. Because you usually don't get more than one, maybe two grade 3 rides in a premium game if you're playing that kind of deck. Um, Unless you're superior riding, but that's a whole other thing. Um, so I don't know exactly how they're going to change. I don't know if this effect is more potent or powerful than getting Excel markers, getting force markers, or whatever. So we'll kind of see how the effects that the cards themselves have sort of play off of the mechanic.
I can't wait for every single clan to have access to Bad End Dragger. Every single time they ride. Isn't that fun?
I mean, does it matter that much for premium though? And that's kind of the thing to get at. For D series standard, it seems like a nice, stable primary mechanic that will both encourage the sale of packs and encourage a fairly like turn 4, 5, 6-ish format, which I think is fairly healthy. Premium is currently a turn 4 format, turn 5 at the latest. Um, we're not getting the kind of rewriting that you would need to really make use of this skill. The net neutral of it is nice, and you are missing the ride deck in premium, but you do have plenty of ways to ensure your proper grade 3 ride with the B series starters and with the grade 3 searchers. But I, as of right now, with just that skill in mind, I would be hard pressed to say that many clans really want this in comparison to what they already have.
Hello, there is a clan named Narukami that has this skill and is really good because of it.
I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about the continuous skill on the V series Narukami boss, Vanquisher.
Vanquisher, the
Yes.
difference is that generates an Excel marker that also generates multi attack by itself. We don't know the skill in context, and also it does bind, which is what Narukami wants to do.
None of the attacks hit the power from that turn, though.
I think the bigger thing here, though, is that you can very easily acquire that power gain on your first grade 3 turn, whereas you don't with this. You have to hit your second grade 3 without any way to superior ride it. And most superior ride cards um, are not generic. They have name restrictions of some sort. Um, so it's hard to say if if you're playing a deck that can reliably and easily last long enough to get a Persona Ride effect to go off, perhaps it'll have a big impact. But until we see proof of that being able to take place, I'm not sure if it's going to come up that
Yeah, I
often.
could see Premium Angel Feather enjoying this. I could see Premium Granblue enjoying this. Um, Premium Neo Nectar, if that ever exists again, might enjoy this. But it's a hard skill to sort of gauge without the surrounding skills to contextualize it because it's only one part of the cards.
I will say I am kind of concerned with the starting power level of this mechanic. I think the plus 10,000 to your whole front row for a turn is a bit much. If
Especially with old trigger guarding power.
Right, because we know that they're regressing some of the trigger numbers. Grade ones have 5K shields again. Triggers have, I believe, 10K shields again and 5K power gains. Um, while the well, they have that. While the base powers have seemed to stay the same. If we compare that to where V series started, where take the two trial decks, they both ran force ones because that was all that was there at the time. You had higher trigger numbers for power and guard, higher grade one guard numbers, and you were giving um theoretically two circles 10K power by the time you rode twice, which you didn't draw and you're missing one uh column of power compared to this. But I think that's not so far off of a power comparison. I think the power level of 10K on the second ride when you're going first is going to be a little
I
high.
feel it's perfectly fine, specifically because we're taking if the trigger powers are really lower, like back down to 5K where they should be, arguably, I feel that 10K isn't a whole lot because it's a guaranteed skill that you know is going to happen, so you can plan to guard around it and you can plan to attack with it. So there's more skill involved with that as opposed to sacking a crit, flipping a crit off the top of the deck and eating 2 damage because you didn't account for that. But there's more information given on the table that you can play around than hidden information in the deck that nobody can play around.
Fair. I personally think that it should be draw a card in 5K power to the front row, not 10. That's just me. I think starting off at 10K power, seeing how the power creep really took off last rotation of cards, I think it's starting a little high, but we'll see how it all plays out. You have a new design team, so hopefully they can manage it better than last time.
Maybe, maybe 2 years down the line, we'll get Persona Red 2, where instead of, 10K and a draw, we get 5K and 2 draws.
5K grip.
It's a meme.
It is interesting to note that with the ride deck, we have the ability to run different ratios in our grade choices. We aren't tied to this perfect math that was developed in the beginning Vanguard, quote unquote, of the 17, 13, 11, 9. With that being said, and we saw this with the Dragon Empire trial deck, where it was just the name and the grade of the units were unveiled. But the trial deck had 4 additional grade zeros for a total of 21 grade zeros. Do you think that will be a trend where D series standard decks will prioritize some of these higher valued shield numbers in the lower grades now that you have the consistency of rides locked up? And the fact that Persona Ride will just help to make it so if you run less grade twos, you can still punch in with those grade one 5Ks that are now 15s.
I definitely think it's gonna be a whole lot more interesting for deck building. Looking at just the Yu Yu Kondo start deck, it's really interesting that we've got the 2 orders, we have 4 additional grade zeros on top of our starter.
Orders are a lot kinder now. Running an order doesn't feel as bad as before.
I think being able to have orders in your deck without worrying about, "Am I going to misride because of this?" is a very good feeling. It feels now closer to what orders should be, like, as spell cards than what they were, which was half the time it's a brick, half the time it does some kind of useful effect. So I hope now that we have that space that they can move toward more like what the Bang Dream decks were, where these orders were key parts of the strategy. So you had to play them. So you had to have room for them.
So with that all being said, these mechanics are interesting, but we just don't know a lot right now. A lot of questions, not a lot of answers this week. But the one question that we didn't know to ask, but was answered for us, was the return of Bushiroad Spring Fest. As many of you know, with the current situation going on around the world that began around February-ish last year, um, there were a handful of Springfest events that did happen. There were like two or three before things got really particularly bad, and then the entirety of Springfest after that, including the fall tournament series and the World Championships, were all canceled due to the current climate of the world. Um, so it's been kind of barren for competitive events. However, we did get confirmation and some information about Bushiroad's plans for Springfest 2021. So very very similar to their normal model with that they've developed over the past few months. There will be a shop league format to encourage play at your local store. Um, there will be individual shop challenges, and there will also be Vanguard Zero online tournaments, as well as a BSF Bushiroad Springfest online, meaning a large scale, actual competitive tournament. This raises a heck of a lot of questions. But before we get to those, I know I am excited. Ian, are you excited?
I'm really excited because of the promos. Have you seen the promos?
I have.
Oh, plus tournaments coming back, like actually official sponsored tournaments. It's been a full year. What do I do with my cards? But these promos are really insane.
Just for the audience at home, let's dive into those promos for a second that you're so excited about.
So I guess the first one, going from left to right down the order, is for Nubatama, Stealth Dragon Gengan. When your Mask of Domination token attacks cost Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, search your deck for up to one card with the same card name as your Vanguard and put it into your Soul, then shuffle your deck. If you put a card, this gets 15k power until end of the turn, which this is a very good accelerator for a sheer annuity deck in standard because sheer annuity didn't really do much if you didn't have two sheer annuities in the soul. If you found the triple R version, it allowed you to superior ride the VR version over top of it, guaranteeing you one in the soul. But you still needed a way to get the second one in there. This one is now a second option to guarantee that instead of just drawing another grade 3 to soul charge through its own ability. So it accelerates your deck strategy by about a turn in the best scenario. And in the worst scenario, it's an extra 15k power just cause. So I think it's very good including the deck if you can acquire all four for it, since you would definitely want to run four of these, I believe. So the other one is an Elephant Boy, Giant Elephant Battler Heion Mask, which is a grade 2 no grappler unit. Auto rearguard once per turn. When this unit or when your unit stand by your card's ability, you may have this unit and one of your vanguards get 10k till end of turn. So some just good power gain for doing what Nova Grappler does and standing things.
Helps punch over triggers.
Yep, it's only once per turn, but I think if this wasn't, it would be far too out of hand.
It would be filth.
I wonder if it would be used in premium, since premium stand triggers are card abilities, so that does trigger this as well. But
If it wasn't once per turn, probably, but again, it would be filthy. So I'm glad it's once per turn.
fair,
I think this sees play in premium.
maybe a one or two of.
Yeah.
And those are the participation and winner cards per tournament. So whenever you enter a shop league tournament, you're essentially local Saturday afternoon card shop tournament. You will get at least one copy of these as a participation, and the winner will get an additional copy that will have some extra foiling.
Just to clarify, the stealth dragon is for standard, and the elephant is for premium.
But both are legal in standard.
They are both legal and standard, yes, but those are the tournaments to enter to get that particular card for a reward.
Now, the end of season rewards. So these are the each event you will get those participation promos. At the end of the season, you will get depending on how much you participated in your local game store tournaments, you will get some amount of these individual promos, one for standard, one for premium. Dan, if you could take this first one, and then I'll let Ian take the Spike Brothers card that he has been frothing at the mouth to talk about.
Sure. So for standard, we have a Great Nature unit, a grade 1, 8k. Auto rearguard. When placed, if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, put the top card of your deck into your drop zone and perform one of the effects below depending on that card's type. So if that card is a normal unit, you soul charge one, and if it's a trigger, you counter charge one. So just some free resource gain for doing what the standard Granger does, the lottery system, the self mill effects. Or if you're playing Isabel, you just get both.
Yeah, I don't know if this sees play necessarily in that build, but it is nice to see the option. Admittedly, it just doesn't exist right now in
I
standard.
was
So
talking to our local Great Nature main. He was talking specifically about how much he needs this card.
Yeah, it is worth noting that it does say if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, so it was intended to be played with stridiness as well.
yeah, I think that actually may have more bearing and implication on it than necessarily Isabel does. I don't know. It's a big question of we will see.
They do specifically have a stride that
Mills.
Yeah, but the mill does not trigger this. This is just triggered by its when placed, I believe.
Yes.
So it's only a one-time effect. It's not, and there's no way to repeat it in Great Nature.
well, the new Isabel, you can counterblast one to repeat any on place ability.
Okay, so again, standard, viable, premium. We'll see. However, the Spike Brothers card you are so excited about.
Oh my god, I've been waiting for this card for like, what's it been, 4 months, 5 months now that we've seen this card and we've been sitting here waiting for it. We finally get it in English. Gunburst Linebacker. It's a grade 2, 10k. Auto rearguard when it attacks. Cost counterblast 1, soul blast 1, and this unit gets plus 5k until end of turn for each force marker on any of your circles. And then it has a second ability of continuous rearguard. If you have a grade 3 unit in the same column as this unit can attack and intercept from the back row. Oh man, this card did some testing with it. This makes, or at least a month ago when I tested it for the last time, it makes premium Spike Brothers a force to be reckoned with. The amount of combos that you can go off on now with 1 or 2 counterblasts getting 7+ attacks with all decent power is pretty insane.
So Ian, what deck does this go in the most?
All of them. No. It goes in anything that wants to play Rising Nova, which my joke was all of them because Rising Nova, as far as we know, goes in every Spike Brothers deck for the rest of time until they start specifically printing effects that won't work with him.
Including Hellheart 8?
This doesn't actually go in Hellhard. This doesn't do what it needs to in Hellhard because we don't care about the back row attackers.
I guess the question is Hellhard worth playing if this comes out?
Finally, when this comes out, we're gonna have a build in premium that is viable. That's not Hellhard because that's all I'm able to play in our meta. If I want to play spikes, because everybody else, the decks they hurt a lot.
I mean, to be fair, that just is premium right now. How hard is in a clan that can accelerate GB. It is a ridiculously good GB8, but it's still a GB8. It's very restrictive for the skill.
It's also one of the handful decks in the game that can take someone from 1 to 6 or 0 to 6. Which keeping people at 0 is like the only way to stop Nue Dio or Luard in premium. The only way to stop them is to keep them at literally 0.
And speaking of Luard, we have the winter promo cards.
Hey.
Now, note there will be an amount of those season-ending, season participation promos distributed depending on what place you rank or how many points you have. We can talk about the point system and just kind of sort of how that works for anyone who's confused. But the winner's promo cards, just so that way we make sure we mention this, for standard is Dragheart Luard, and for premium is Shaharat Vampire. Both of these cards are very potent in both formats. Shadows definitely has a place both in the standard metagame currently, as well as the premium metagame. There is a debate depending on what style of play you enjoy for Shadows, whether this Dragheart or the other one is your primary ride target. And Shaharat Vampire is one of the best options for Gastile combos. Ian, I know you have recently picked up DI. Are you excited to get a congratulations copy?
I'm excited to fight everyone in premium to the death. Uh, what is this going to be? Twice? Once for each season? And attempt to finish maxing out my deck. Because I currently only have 2 SP Shaharat Vampires and 2 normal sad non-SP Shaharat Vampires. So these will replace the non-SPs.
Yeah, I will say I am a bit sad that they did not choose a stride in particular for the congratulations promo. I think that would have been much more emblematic of premium. I also just in general wish that some of these promos maybe were G Guardians. I don't know, we kind of need
I think
those.
the problem is the promos itself. Because the V Series promos are all legal in V Series.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue. I'm excited for the Drag Heart. I already have 4 SPs though, so any that I get are just for my own personal vanity and nothing more.
I don't I don't play any of these clans, so I am only going to play to get them to gatekeep these two.
Specifically to spite us.
So just so that way we talk about this, um, the unique part about these shop leagues are they are individual tournament series per shop you go to. So these points do not stack up if you go to a shop in the northern side of town on Fridays and then you go to a shop on the southern side of town Saturday mornings and you hop over to the east for a second Saturday afternoon tournament. These don't stack. They're separate between shops. So it encourages you to go to one shop regularly or multiple shops regularly.
I just like this for the fact that it takes locals and it like injects some roids into the prize pool for just 4 months. Is this 4 months this lasts for?
2 months per league,
Yeah, so 4 months in total.
which is the same that it lasted for the winter leagues.
A full third of the year, we're gonna have insane promos and prizes to play for just at locals. Whether one person shows up or 20 people show up, the, these prizes are guaranteed for whoever does show up. That will affect attendance a lot.
It also encourages very regular attendance,
Yeah.
and that's a key thing.
I know there's people at our locals that don't regularly attend that are going to be attending every single week because of these promos.
Hmm. And it is noted that the best way to win these promos, from personal experience, as Ian and I both won one of each of our last seasons at our local tournament, is just show up every week. If you're there, at the very worst, you're collecting participation points, which do count towards it. And just to go over the structure for every event that you enter, You get one participation point and then promo cards, but those aren't the important part right now. For a third place finish in a locals event, you get a 2 point in addition to that. For a second place, you get a 3 point, and for first place, you get 5 points. So winning is important. Just being there and trying to place every week makes a bigger difference. So
I don't even remember what the last Shop Leagues promos were.
They were all really
they
bad.
weren't. Yeah, they weren't great.
Uh,
Were they
This is a big
the
improvement.
Dark Regular and the Lane Joker promos?
yeah, it was the smug. It was like a smug cat for Shadow Paladins. It was some Link Joker card.
Shadows or LJ?
It was
Because I'm looking at
just
'Either way,
2020.
it's a
It
big
was a Lane
improvement.
Joker cat
Yeah.
and a Dark Irregulars card.
for the whole all of the promos. That's all it was,
Yep.
and we still haven't even
Yeah, there
gotten
was
those yet.
no end. Yeah, there was no end of the season first place promos kind of thing.
Yeah. Either way, this is a massive improvement to the Shop League formula. I hope that they continue with this sort of trajectory. I think that this really encourages people to play at their local game store, or like our local game store is doing, play at the online tournaments hosted by the local game store. Because it is not necessarily safe everywhere in the world to gather and congregate currently. And this brings us to the next in this group of events, as Shop League isn't the only thing. I think, and this is just me speaking here, and I definitely would like to hear from both of you. I think they just announced that Shop League was happening and these improvements were being made to it. I think I would have been pretty happy. I think that would have filled what I would have expected from Bushiroad. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that this goes well. Well, I guess it went well last time because they're doing it again. I hope that they can expand this into other events. I think they've teased maybe on their website of a Bushiroad Springfest online, which I think is a bit ambitious.
We will get there. I just had Shop League in a mythical world where Bushiroad, as per usual prior to this, does the bare minimum to meet our expectations. Would Shop League have satisfied? Like, yeah, this is what I expect. This is better. I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, I think if all goes well and it reaches the expectations we set for it, as long as the prizes stay relevant and don't become irrelevant by the time the uh season ends, I think you'll make turnout and competition in itself much more much better.
How about you, Ian?
I'm super excited for this. It's very interesting though that out of all of this, out of all the terrible things that have happened in the past year, because of it, we got a complete overhaul in our normal shop league structure, going from like a one of big tournament with no real support outside of a gift marker for top three and a cool promo, just one for participating, turning it into going from a shop challenge to a shop league now is a massive
This
improvement
is a massive
in the
improvement
distribution
comparative
of
to
key
that.
promos and getting hype up for locals in general. I think this is a huge win, just in total.
Yeah. In comparison, prior to the global situation, and post what was it, 2018 with the loss of ARG Circuit Series, uh, locals were essentially a place where either it was just to hang out with friends or was a uh, looser way to prep for the larger Bushiroad Spring Circuit Series tournaments. But other than that, there wasn't really much on the line. Store credit if your store offers it, cash or product if your store offers it, and usually mediocre promo.
Last year, right before lockdown, locals felt more and more every single day, and our attendance started to drop off too because of it. It felt more and more like less like an actual tournament for you to go and compete at, and more of like I'm gonna go to test this new deck idea I have and see how terrible it is. And then you would have
I plead the fifth.
then you have the 2 weeks before an actual event, it would get, attendance would jump up, people would take serious decks, and then immediately afterwards, it would go back to memes. But that might just be us.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of this. I even just doing the Shab League, honestly, through online Discord games, I've been bringing meme deck after meme deck just to see what works, what's fun, what's interesting, how does this fare in this environment, just kind of see what happens because there currently isn't any larger end goal to really push forward or push for. And even the last season, the promos that were there didn't matter to me. They weren't in any of the clans I play, so I personally didn't care that much. Um, this time I have at least one that I would like to acquire for myself in the highest foil possible. So there's more of that incentive to bring an actual deck, put your actual effort into the game, and try to win as many as you can.
Yeah.
And there's not only that incentive, but, and this is the part we know the least about, this fair warning will be mostly speculation, but I feel like that's what we do best. They announced two other larger scale formats. One of them, which we'll talk about a little, but none of us are really heavy Vanguard Zero players. Ian
Yeah, I
does
used
play
to be a
some.
pretty decently sized
Um,
streamer for it, but
However,
I've since burnt out on it.
um, Bushiroad has announced a Bushiroad Spring Fest, a true Spring Fest online. Now, for those of you listening who don't know, the three of us are based here on the East Coast. We usually attend the New York or Newark regional events, and we have traveled to some others. But for a Springfest attendance, usually for standard, we'd be looking at about 5 to 800 people. A really good event might get up to 1,000. Premium, we'd be looking at about 3 to 600, 700 maybe. Last event. So we are
Yeah.
used to large
Um, Normally
BSFs.
our Spring Fests aren't as large as our championship series. But those are normally team league, and I don't think they're gonna do team league this time around because that would be really hard to organize. Like, it's already gonna be ridiculously hard to organize an event with hundreds of people over webcams. But I have no idea how they would do over webcams with teams.
Right. Yeah, so like I said when I jumped the gun a little bit, it's very ambitious. How I can see them pulling this off is, and I don't know what the upper limit of concurrent
They will crash
uh
Discord if they try to do this.
upper limit of concurrent users a single Discord server can hold. Um how many different chat rooms they can make, but how I envision it in a perfect world would be for each Springfest, because I imagine they would have to section it off by region of for participants. Um, they would probably have a different Discord server for every block if they have that many participants. So if there's a block and a B block, they have two separate servers for those groupings. And then every round they post, you'd find your table, which would be video, a video or a voice chat room, and you'd play a video game. The problem I see with this is that it would require people to have some kind of setup um to be able to do this, and there'd have to be some rules in place to prevent cheating cuz it's incredibly easy to just move your deck out of camera view, put that card on top you really need when you're shuffling and then put it back. So there's a lot that can go wrong with this.
There was a huge deal about this in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where, one guy got caught with a tin right next to him full of staples, and inside the tin was a copy of every single staple in the format, all in the same sleeve as his deck, and he would, shuffle his hand around, throw a card from his hand in the tin, grab a staple that he needed, grab, hand traps, all kinds of shit.
so they would have to make a rule that your deck must stay in camera at all times, and that would then fall to the responsibility of the opponent to watch this, keep track of it. Similar to how a standard event goes, but you have to find a way to call a judge, and they would have to work out a lot of issues that are bound to happen. But if they can figure out a way to make this work, I'm very excited to what this could mean for the future of tournaments for Bushiroad if they're willing to go this far to get us playing again.
Me personally, just thinking about this while we're talking about it, I think the only feasible way they can pull this off is as an invitational. So only like select people from each shop are allowed to enter to forcibly cut down the numbers
Sort of like the way
and
they use
only invite
regionals.
more competitive and people who would be less inclined to want to cheat and more inclined to want to actually play the game and who are quote unquote good at the game.
So you think like top three finalists of the shop league for each format gets invited. So if you're in first, second, or third for premium, you're invited to the premium invitational,
Yeah,
and
I
same
could
for
see
standard.
that, and then also basically do the anime thing where you 3 are now a team, go.
That'd be interesting.
That would be terribly interesting. That would also give us a best of three format, in a very roundabout way. But that was essentially what Springfest was before, now wasn't it? It was a roundabout best of three format.
Yeah, because they didn't want Vanguard matches taking an hour, because we would be there longer than all day.
Yeah.
Oh, boohoo, Bushiroad, your game's popular.
I will say best of three, especially in a more complex format like premium, is horrible. It is.
I think in premium it'd be fine because games end in 4 turns.
Oh boy. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Right, Ian?
Yeah, there's slight problems with best of 3. Like, me and Mike have had games where we go to 4th stride, and we've had games where I kill you while you're on grade 1.
But it is interesting that you bring this up, the sort of logistical aspect of it. It seems like no matter how we look at this won't be, and of course due to this year, due to the global climate, this won't be a standard spring fest where it's the large gathering sort of thing. That's not even feasible online, let alone in person. Um, it is interesting that there are different ways that they could take of sort of breaking down these tournaments where they would be like invite only and do teams from there, or invite only and just singular players, or regions and then invite only, or do regions and break it up into like 64-man tournaments. There are different ways to break it down, but most of them are going to involve some sort of exclusion. Some sort of certain players won't be able to play in certain events, and that's just going to have to be how it's going to be from what it looks like on the outside. Unfortunately, we don't know anything about the promos. We don't know anything about the pricing. I would imagine it's going to be a standard like winners promo, and that's essentially in like maybe a trophy or a medal shipped to you, but that's essentially going to be what the pricing is for the event. But we just don't know. I personally am excruciatingly excited to have a reason to actually play and test and really work towards something. I do like the idea that you mentioned, Ian. It is very similar to how in the olden days, in the first wave of regional tournaments, it would be you would have to win a shop challenge and then you would get your invitation to regionals. Um, so I like the idea of maybe that would be coming back. Um, it would help to build a more hierarchy of competitive play.
Yeah, it does take away for an event like this, I think it would be perfectly fine, but as the to make it the new normal again, I think it takes more away from the event than it adds. Because excluding, like, newer players or people that can't qualify or don't have a locals nearby from going to these big events just takes a lot of the heart and soul out of it. Because there was a huge difference having participated in both, like, ARG nationals and several regionals. There's a huge difference in the atmosphere from, like, a nationals and a regional because of the type of people that are there.
And just so our audience knows, what was the difference, not only just in name and in the company that ran it? What was the primary difference between an ARG Nationals, very specifically, versus a just standard Bushiroad Regionals?
Actual prize support.
There's that. Um,
Other than that,
but because it was an invite-only tournament, out of the people that got the invites, only the people that really wanted to go. So you have the top percent of the top percent of players going to this event.
and how did you get the invites?
And the only way to get the invite was to top was it what was it, like, top 2 at, one of their
Top two, a shop invitational.
so it was super spiky at a Nats.
So you kind of dismissed my quote, my yes joke answer of prize support, but that's actually a very legitimate answer
Yeah, that
because
is the
ARG
reason why it's so
offered
spiky.
yeah, ARG offered actual monetary prize support for those who won their national and invitational events, which is why there were a higher level of people playing because they were there playing to win an actual prize, to win actual money. So there was more on the line than just a couple promos that are shiny, but I already have the actual card. It doesn't change the game. This was that there was a real reason to put the effort, put the time into practicing, to making sure you knew your matchups, knew how to run your deck flawlessly, and doing the best you could to win the entire tournament.
But even putting that aside, I think the whole stigma of an invitational versus an open, just inherently makes it way more competitive of an environment. And I understand that what you were saying about how these promos don't quite equal actual prize support and actual hard money.
Well, I was saying these promos are a step closer because they're new cards that you don't get anywhere else. And if you want the certain promos, you have to do well. So I think it's a step in the right direction for a more competitive environment overall in the Vanguard community.
And there is a particular thing to note. Um, Again, we are just speculating. We have no idea. We have no uncles at Bushiroad as much as we would like to. Um, but um, with the prior format ARG Nationals that was discontinued in 2018, I believe, due to ARG no longer maintaining the circuit series to keep it going and focusing on their own game. Rest in peace, Argent Saga. Um, to the standard Bushiroad Springfest. The key thing here, and the key thing in the whole world right now, is that while these changes are adjustments to keep life going as normal as possible, these hopefully won't be the new norms. So if Springfest was invitational only this year, I think I think first of all, the fact that it might be available, like we are theorizing, to top 3 of people who finish in their shop leagues in each format, might be both a little more open than ARG Nats was. ARG Circuit Series events were pretty prevalent, especially towards the end. But it was still quite difficult to win your invite. There were a lot of people gunning, and there was always real prize money.
I mean, we've had our own locals of ARGs with up to 26 to 30 some people running for one or two slots. So, like, they get competitive.
The very first the very I remember specifically 'cause, Chris and Kevin came up to me, after we ran it. The very first ARG locals that we ran at the store after getting Vanguard started up had 40 people.
Yeah.
It was
It
like
was massive.
44 people
We
show
did
up.
not expect that attendance
Uh,
when we were planning
and
that event.
Chris and Kevin, like the 2 main faces of the front end of the store that we play at, came up to me at the end of the event and they're like, "Why haven't we been running this game all this time? You said this game's been out for how long and we're just now starting to run it?" when we're getting that many people,
Yeah, people come from all over the state. North Jersey, from Delaware, from
yeah, from that one event, incentivize the store to pick up product galore for Vanguard and fully support everything that we wanted to do, that we had full control over what gets run on what day.
And it is interesting to note how the parallels could end up here. Um, but again, it's all speculation. We just don't know. They haven't come out with any information about Springfest yet. My guess is they're probably still working out the details themselves. As us sitting here, we brainstormed about 5 to 6 different possible solutions, and none of them seem necessarily perfect. Um, the other event that they did mention, and again, on either I don't really play Vanguard Zero, and I don't believe you do as well, Dan. But they did mention that a Vanguard Zero spring circuit will be occurring. So yay, competitive support for the mobile game. I guess. Does this matter?
it matters to an extent. Um, I don't foresee them having the turnout, or actually, I can't say that. I don't play Zero. I don't enjoy it that much. But there are a lot of people who do. A lot of people within our own group who do. So it's possible that there'll be a large turnout. My hope is that those who started Vanguard with Zero, seeing that there's a tournament being put on by the company for it, will find their way moving into the physical game as well when they see there's more people playing that, and it's not just a mobile game, there's a real game behind it. So hopefully it'll somehow lead to more players in the community playing actual Vanguard. um and if that is the case, then I'm all for it, more support for Zero. um but personally, I don't have much stock in it. I've played Zero for a number of hours since it came out, but I've barely touched it um in the past like half a year or year, however long it's been, I don't even know. So I have no stock in the game. I have no real desire to participate in it. But if it helps support the community, I'm all for it.
I just did a quick count of the number of stores that are listed on Bushiroad's website that officially support Vanguard, and it's about 100. So if we were to,
Not all of those necessarily are active.
yeah, so if they were to take from my previous statement, for example, the top 3 from each store, and every single store submitted a top 3, that would be 300 players from all of America, from all of the United States.
Per format.
Yeah, per format.
There would be separate days, separate tournaments. Well,
Right.
regardless.
Yeah, which would be more reasonable than the few thousand that they would probably get if they just opened this up to everybody.
Yeah. Well, they usually have 300 teams at Springfest, is usually how it goes.
For our particular Springfest, 300 teams. So you're talking 1,000 people in just the northeastern side of the United States alone.
Yeah, it's usually around 300 teams and about 600 individual players for regionals per format. I think premium is
Yeah.
usually, like, slightly less.
So, interesting to note that with that math, it may make a difference. Do you have any thoughts about Vanguard Zero, particularly for the spring circuit, or it's good?
Um, I think it's a amazing thing like, having Vanguard Zero be part of your physical card game event, because it does bridge the gap of those communities, those ex-players that now only play Zero, but used to play the game all the time, um, now being in the same space, theoretically, as the physical card game players. It might incentivize them more to, "Hey, you know," like, let's say when we finally pick back up in physical and they continue this on, and for regionals, they have in-person tournament for Zero. It would incentivize people to, "Well, if I'm gonna come down for the weekend for this one game, I might as well pick a game that's on the other day of the event and, make a deck for that, and play that too while I'm down here, and just enjoy myself." Which originally was the whole reason why when I got back into the game, I played premium because it was, I bought my Seafried Spike Brothers deck, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to regionals anyway, so I might as well just grab a G Zone and the handful of cards that I need to turn this standard deck into a premium deck, and I'll play the premium day too." And I ended up enjoying that very much, and now like premium better than standard.
Oh, the way the world turns. Yeah, I mean, again, we don't know anything about it. We'll have to see. I do think, at the very least, if it wasn't an in-person event, but it was like a Friday night, like series of tournaments run through the Vanguard Zero app, it might give something to do. We've always had Saturday and Sunday events, but we've never really broken that sort of threshold of getting past the weekend and really making it a 3-day event, so to speak. Usually, what most people end up doing, ourselves included, is we use Friday as our day to travel, and we'll drive the 1.5 to 3 hours that it would be for depending on which location we were at, and we would just hang out and test in the evening. It would be interesting to see if that would incentivize people a little more to, on the flip side, who play the card game, to get involved in Zero, where it's like, well, we're already here, we might as well sit and play some matches on Zero and see if we can win some. So, but all in all, I'm excited that there are tournaments. I'm excited that they are trying these new things. I can tell that you both are, at the very least, excited about some, if not all, of these new things. And quite frankly, I hope that they continue. I miss tournaments. I miss events. I miss all those sorts of normal world things. And I'm excited to get back there, but in the meantime, we have to make do with what we got. And I will take this.
Absolutely.
But with that being said, I believe this episode has come to its close. Um,
And Mike, one last thing.
yes.
I think the real lesson this week is that it's not about the journey. It's about remembering to not Drachma the deleter player, so they delete your Drachma mid-battle phase and almost losing because of it.
Yeah, our editor will have a fit due to that.
Great segue. Great segue. If I may plug here for a quick minute, Team Last Stand does weekly Saturday streams of our locals events at twitch.tv/Last Stand Vanguard. And actually, this coming up Saturday, I believe February the 6th, we are doing a legacy event where we're playing decks comprised of cards from Limit Break era and prior. So anything from Stride and afterwards is not being played. Modified, sorry, from Legion and afterwards. There's a slightly modified rule set to make things run smoother, a bit more smoother, but start around 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Like I said, twitch.tv/Last Stand Vanguard. Please come check us out. Happy to see you there.
Yep. We have our local tournament hosted through our local card shop via webcam, as we are being safe. Um, and normally the formats are standard or premium rotating, but this week is a special treat for those of us older players. With that being said, thank you so much to everyone who's listened and who will continue to listen. If you could, please like, share, and subscribe, all the YouTuber things, um, to help us grow and hopefully make this into something a bit more. Special thanks to our editor, Josh, who does a wonderful job at making us sound like we are actually intelligent human beings and not just gremlins. And with all that said, this has been Team Last Stand. Thanks for listening.